Welcome back to another episode of the Odd or God Pod, where we talk about sobriety, spirituality, and everything in between. This week, we have a very special episode, something that I have been looking forward to for quite some time. I think when I first reached out to Kevin, it was probably a little over a month ago, and we just had some scheduling conflicts. We finally got something to work, and he was able to join us this afternoon, and we're super blessed and grateful for that. And this week, we're just going to be talking a little bit about, his story, what he's doing every day to maintain his spiritual connection, right? Maintain his spiritual maintenance, right, of his program. And I'm super excited to hear what he has to say. There's a lot of cool things that it's going on in his life, and I think it's really going to help a lot of people out. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and let Kevin introduce himself.
Thanks, Eric, for having me. My name is Kevin G. I'm a recovered crystal meth addict. My sobriety date is January 12th, 2012, and for that I'm truly grateful. I have a sponsor. His name's Ray P., and I hope I can be as good as he was. And then my home group is Tweakers Hope Meeting at Crystal Meth Anonymous, 6:30 at Friday nights at the Pigeon Coop, and I sponsor a handful of guys. I got a couple in the book.
Awesome, man.
And to premise why I say that is because when I first got sober, my first sponsor told me those are the things, the basic recipe. Like if I'm baking a cake, I have to have a basic recipe. Those are the basic recipe to have good quality sobriety.
Right.
So.
That's awesome, man. And for those of you, our loyal followers, the Otters, that's a cool name. The Otters.
The
ODDER for those of you who can't put that together. But anyways, Ray, our most previous episode, like he was saying, works with Kevin. And so the bar is set high, man. The bar is set high. The pressure's on, but I think you're going to knock it out of the park. But what I wanted to kind of get the ball rolling with and talk a little bit about is you're part of a group. The Knights at the Round Table, and it's a fellowship of men here in the Valley that are in sobriety, all about service work, and I don't know too much about it, but I wanted to see, how long have you been involved with that, and what's your position within that?
Okay, so the Knights of the Round Table. It's a meeting, of course, but it's also a registered 501c3. And we have a vision statement to help the drug addict and the alcoholic who still suffers, the man, and also to give back to those communities that we stole from. And we do a lot of different things. You played in the golf tournament.
Yeah.
That's one of our major fundraisers.
It was a great time.
And so some of the service work we do, there's 5 chapters right now. There's 3 in Phoenix and 1 or 2 in North Dakota. And we're expanding.
Wow.
Look for it. So it was started by a gentleman named Brian Ong. Okay? And he started this group, and they started meeting, and it turned into an accountability lineage meeting. So I was sponsored into that. My first sponsor, Nick H., who you also had on this podcast.
Right. So you have to have a sponsor who's already part of the group.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and that's where the lineage comes from.
You have to be sponsored in.
Okay.
And then you asked me, that was maybe the 3rd meeting I ever went to.
Really?
And my sponsor told me, he said, you will attend this meeting every week. And I'm so grateful I did. The camaraderie and the fellowship and the accountability, is just amazing. Right now, I'm on the executive committee. I'm the secretary for that. But I also am the leader of the East Valley chapter. So I got a little bit going on with the Knights.
Yeah, you do, man. You're in there, man. In there like swimwear, some would say.
Yep.
But that's super cool. And I've heard I don't want to say rumors, but I've heard that there is kind of a tradition, right, where when you attend the meetings with your sponsor and you get part of the group, and if you hit a year's sobriety, there's something special that goes on there. Tell us a little bit about that.
So, at regular AA meetings, you could show up and get a coin. All right. So we do a silver dollar minted in the year that you got sober. Okay? And your sponsor will buy it for you if you, those first things that I talked about, if you, went through all 12 steps with a night sponsor, have a home group service commitment, actively attending the night's meeting, and then actively sponsoring dudes.
Right.
And that gets you your first coin.
Okay. And then, every year after that,
you get, so when you get the coin, there's one jewel in it.
Right.
And it's put in.
Do you have yours on you?
I do.
You
I
do?
carry it everywhere I go.
Can we see it maybe?
Absolutely.
Wow. This is my first time seeing one of these fabled coins. This is kind of a big moment for me.
You know what? Oh, there it is. I was like, oh no, I lost it.
Oh, wow. And you get a
so
a
the
stone.
first jewel that they put in there, it is right in the center of the lady's head, because our disease centers in our mind, right?
Wow.
And then it says, God, AA, because that's what we have to put first, right? God, AA, and then everything else.
Yeah.
And on the back, there's a little 3-letter acronym or whatever that's your sponsor, between you and your sponsor.
Really?
And then each year, you'll get another semi-precious jewel in it.
Wow. So each one of these are, because when I first thought it kind of looked bedazzled. Mm-hmm. What are these stones here?
They're just semi-precious jewels.
Really? That is interesting, guys. Check this out, man. I've heard about these. I've never actually felt one or seen one in person, so this is really cool. And that's just something that you guys do in your group, and as long as you're meeting the requirements and doing the deal.
Yep.
Wow. And
so it's something, it's something that you have to work for.
Yeah.
And it's a prized possession for me. Because I had to work really hard to get this. And the premise is that if you get loaded, you're supposed to use this coin. And maybe, just maybe, you'll see that coin and you'll think about the work that you put in, and maybe you'll call your sponsor.
wow.
Or somebody else.
Wow. So that's the deal. If you feel like you're going to go get loaded, pay with it. Pay for it with this coin.
Pay for it with the coin.
Wow. That is, that's some story, man, there. And again, guys, if it sounds like I'm just learning this for the first time, I am. I've never had this conversation with a knight and really learned about what they're all about. But what I can say is this, right? I know I can't even count how many guys that I know that are part of this fellowship here in the Valley, and they are some of the most solid guys that I know when it comes to working knowledge of the program, when it comes to putting the principles before personalities and going out there and each day, reaching their hand out to the man who's still sick and suffering. And that's what we're taught in the program, is that, that's the core of what we're doing. What are you doing, to this day in your involvement with the Knights, just involvement in your program? What are the things that you're doing to maintain that?
Well, it's funny you should say that, because I was thinking a little bit about that today. And, I basically do the same things I did the first day that I walked into treatment that my sponsor suggested I do. I talk to my sponsor every day in some form or fashion. I hit my knees in the morning and I pray. And I ask God to keep me sober and to put people in my life that he would like me to help, and then throughout the day I'll do some 10 steps. I'm not perfect, and then when I retire at night, I will hit my knees and say thank you for the life I get to live today, because it's Brian Ong used to say, you need to do that because you had nothing to do with it. It's all God. Okay, I can put in some actions, but the keeper of the cards is God. And if I'm close to Him, then I can stay sober and have a good life.
That's awesome, man. And what I love that you just touched on is that 10th step, right? And that's an everyday thing. There's going to be things that come up every single day that needs to be addressed, right? And promptly, so it doesn't build into something more. I mean, walk us through like what that looks like for you and, for anybody watching who's curious.
Well, there's a couple different ways that you can do a 10 step, but how I was taught to do it is it's a spot check inventory. So throughout the day, I'm gonna, if like I have an argument with my wife or something and I can't see my part in it, first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pray, okay, and take some of the power away from it, because it says in the big book that anger is the friend of the slips my mind right now. The grouch in the brainstorm, right?
Yeah.
I'm not that.
Yeah, a dubious luxury for men.
Exactly.
Not us. Not us alcoholics.
So then I'll pray, and then I will call somebody and I'll tell them what's going on, because this can get delusional real quick, right?
Oh, yeah.
Because it centers in my mind. So I will call somebody and I'll tell them what's going on in the situation, and then they'll tell me, this is your part and this is what you need to do. So then after I do that, then I turn my thoughts and my actions to somebody that I can help. Maybe it's somebody I haven't heard from in a while. I'll call them. It's funny. God has put some stuff on my heart the last couple of days, right? There's a guy that was in our group, and everybody thought he was really solid, and he went out, and nobody's really heard from him. And I've reached out a couple times in the last 3 or 4 months, but nothing. And yesterday, when I was coming back down the hill, I reached out to him, and I said, hey, I hope you're doing okay. God put you in my heart. Is there anything that I can do to help you? And he reached out to me. And he's like, I do need help. I've got these resentments, and I've got a little bit of delusion. And I'm like, okay, what can I do to help you? And he goes, well, I probably need to get a sponsor. And I said, I would be honored to sponsor you, because that's God. God has got me sober and got me this far to be of maximum service to God and the people about me, right?
Right.
And so I have to take every opportunity to do that.
That's awesome, man.
Even when I don't want to.
Yeah.
And then I a lot of people send me, like, every morning they'll send me a daily devotion or something. And I got one this morning, and I was reading it, and I'm like, this person came onto my heart. So I forwarded it to that person. I said, God put this on my heart to send to you. And the person texted me back, and she said, thank you. This is the 1-year anniversary of my mom's memorial.
Wow.
And it was like spot on.
Yeah.
And it's like, and I'm coming to this podcast. Is that odd or is that God?
Exactly.
It's
really
God.
Yeah.
And I truly believe, you know, and he's always there if I let him. When I when I first got sober and I did my steps and stuff like that, when I got to step 12, I could look back and say, in that exact moment, Why that went down the way it was? Because God wasn't done with me. God had his handwork all over that.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and we've talked about that I call it divine timing, right? Where when we're not plugged into our spiritual connection with a higher power, right, and we're not doing the things that we do, we very rarely see that in the moment. But if we're lucky enough to have gone through that process, gone through the 12 steps and do what we need to do on a daily basis, like you said, you can look back and track everything that had happened to get you to that point, and you'll see where God was working in everything, right? And that's so cool. And what I love what you said is this is a concept that took me a couple years to figure out, right? Where it's like my sponsor's very adamant about praying first, right? If I'm in a situation where I'm getting emotionally overwhelmed, or I'm starting to rest on my laurels, if you will, and go back to all these old behaviors, my first thing I need to do is I need to bring it to God, right? Because if I call my sponsor first, and I haven't prayed about it, and I haven't at least tried to reach out to God and see where the God is in that situation, he's gonna ask me, well, did you pray on it? And if I tell him no, he's gonna be like, well, maybe that's where you should start, And I love that you said that, because it's something that I still struggle with every day. Sometimes I'll prematurely call him, start complaining right off the bat. Oh, this. He said, well, man, when did you pray about it? I didn't, right? And mostly every time I'm able to at least okay, I'm a little bit calmer now. If anything, I'm like, well, maybe I played a bigger part in this than I'm thinking I did.
Exactly. Your sponsor sounds like a good dude.
Yeah.
But I know, and I have probably done this with some of my sponsees. They will call me and start a rant, and I'll say, did you pray about it? And if they say no, click.
Yeah. Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
That's how those conversations go.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the accountability.
Call me back after you pray.
Yeah.
Click.
Yeah. It's like, I can appreciate what you're feeling right now, but why don't you pray on it, and then you come back to me after that, and we'll have a conversation. And in what that's done with me over the time that I've worked with him is it builds that muscle, right? Yep. You're building the habit of taking everything to God. God is either everything or he's nothing.
What's my choice to be?
Right.
And that can be like, in this moment, I can choose God, but 10 minutes later, I still, people talk about, my disease is in the parking lot doing push-ups. Mine's like right here with me, on my shoulder, in my head, and can show itself at any time, right? And it's in my voice, and thank God for good sponsorship.
Right.
Because without it,
the fellowship would have died years ago, right? Because
exactly.
Look at where it's become, right? It's we're in 80-something years since those two guys, a stockbroker and a doctor, met each other and created this whole deal, right? Yep. And it's like, how has it gotten to where it's at? And it's about people having a working understanding of the program and sharing that information with still others who are still sick.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that was one of the things that my first sponsor told me. I finished my steps in about the first time in about 40 days. And he told me, you need to start sponsoring guys. I was still in treatment, but they would let me go to outside meetings, and I would raise my hand, and I'd go talk to guys that needed sponsors. And I got my first sponsee 61 days in. The day after I got out of treatment, I got my first sponsee. And it's been I think Ray said this, but home group, service commitment, calling your sponsor, doing 90 and 90, that becomes a habit. And if I'm not doing that, I start to feel some kind of way.
Yeah. No, and you're so right, because I've literally, that was my experience as well, where it's like when I first excuse me, when I first got into treatment, it was more of something like I have to do this, right? Like I've got all this legal problem, my family's on me, like, and so I'm in sober living, out of treatment, and I'm just like, this is something that it's like I have to do. It's almost like a chore for me, right? But the good thing about being in that structure and like doing the 90 and 90 and building those habits is that if you're lucky and if it's done correctly, right, and it will become a way of life. And now it's not necessarily I have to do this so much as it's just like, this is what I do, right? In order to have the life that I have, I need to do these things, right? Yep. And it's like, if I stop taking my medicine, I'm going to get sick again.
Yep.
And my medicine is, like you said, home group. My medicine is accountability, my group of accountability brothers, right? Where it's like, that's my network and my sponsor, and helping other guys out, and like just staying in the core of the program. And it's like, it is a way of life. And now it's not even a question. There's certain nights of the week, no ifs, ands, or buts. It's better be some special occasion if I'm going to miss that meeting, because that's my home group. That's my tribe.
Yep.
You know, and I love that. And you kind of touched on it too, where you pray on it, right? You talk to somebody about it, but then you get right back into helping others. You get right back into, what can I do for somebody else, right? To you know, that service work. That's just so important. You said coming down the hill when you were talking with that guy.
I just got back from a retreat for the nights for my men's group, and amazing. Every time I go up there, I come back spiritually and emotionally recharged. Maybe a little bit physically exhausted, but it's like those carry you on and get you back into, you know, and the one thing that I don't know that I took away from the retreat was a lot of it was, you have to be honest. You know, honest with yourself as well as others. Mm-hmm. And when I first got sober, I couldn't be honest with myself or anybody else. And that's the first principle behind step one. And you know, when I first went to treatment, I was facing some legal trouble, okay? And I was in the probation officer's office, and he gave me a choice. And I was terrified of going to prison, but I thought about it. Prison or treatment, you know? And I say this, it probably didn't happen this way, but it's fixed in my mind that I was sitting in the chair and the Jeopardy music was playing, the do 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 do, you know, and I said, I'll go. So when I got to treatment, I was like, I can do this standing on my head, 30 days. And I remember they said, you need to get a sponsor. And that first night in treatment, there was a CMA meeting in the house. Mm-hmm. And Nick H. was the speaker. And you know Nick, and I know Nick, and we're polar opposites.
He's very passionate, man, and I love seeing him when he gets into his shares.
And he's 20 some odd years younger than me. And I was like, when he sat down, like we do, I judged him. You know, oh, this is one of those cool kids with the flat bill, and you know, what's he gonna tell me? Because
all tatted up.
I'm a 46-year-old grown-ass man, right? And I don't know nothing. And he sat there and he started to speak, and something happened in me that I was able to relate. And after he got done speaking, I stood up, and my feet felt like they weighed 15 pounds each. And I was like struggling to get over to talk to him. And I asked him to be my sponsor. And he got really passionate. He's like, cool. He's all, okay, a couple of things. Do you pray? And I'm like, not really. I'm like, who do I pray to? And he goes, I don't care as long as it's a light switch because that'll turn on you. Or a doorknob.
Wow.
Right? And then he said, you're probably pretty sick, so you probably need to pray on your knees. And I'm like, okay. And he said, to make sure that you pray on your knees, put your shoes underneath your bed. Put them far enough that you have to get down on your knees. And when you wake up in the morning, you have to get down on your knees to get your shoes. You might as well pray while you're down there, right? And that's how it all started. You know, and he told me that it can be as simple as this, Kevin. God, please keep me sober, because you have nothing to do with it, right? And then at the end of the day, if that happens, thank you. And that's where it all started. And when I walked into that treatment center, I, probably for the first 6 months, guys were like, he ain't going to make it. He ain't going to make it. Because I still had in the back of my mind that I was going to go back and I was going to get the stuff that I had back.
Right.
But at some point, I had that spiritual awakening, spiritual experience, and the rest is history. Right?
That's amazing, man. And it's like where it says we're a group of people who would normally not mix, right? And how true is that? And I think we touched on it in Ray's episode too. I truly believe rehab treatment is the true melting pot of the world, because when I was in, I had no experience with it, right? And I was like forced into treatment by my family. And what happened in those 30 days is I saw people from every walk of life, every age group, every demographic you can think of. We're all in this same treatment center, doing the same arts and crafts, doing the same group therapy, right? And it's like, that's when it clicked on me, that it doesn't matter of anything else other than, we were all alcoholics and we were all addicts, right? And that because of that one commonality, we actually had more in common with each other than anybody else, right? And I wanted to ask you, right, this has become the most popular segment of the podcast. Out of the 12 steps, which one is your favorite and why?
I think it's 2. I always go back to that, because if I do step 1, they say that's the only one you have to do perfect. But then you find out, okay, I'm insane, and God can restore you to sanity. And I can get insane pretty quick, even today, 11 years in, right? But I always go back to step 2, right? And the rest of the steps always go back to step 2, right? Like you said, God is everything or he's nothing. What's my choice to be? And it says deep down in every man, woman, and child is a concept of God. And what does that look like today is something totally different than when I first hit my knees in treatment. Ray was talking about being Southern Baptist. I too, Southern Baptist. And I can remember going to vacation Bible study and Sunday school and all that stuff and not fitting in. I can remember the spiritual malady that far back. And it's like I when I first got sober, I didn't really think about that. But as I've done some work and several times have gone through the steps, I find out that I have the spiritual malady from the beginning. And, what was my solution to the spiritual malady? Drugs and alcohol, right? And when I first got sober, I didn't think I was an alcoholic. And my sponsor told me, Kevin, I think you need to look at your experience. And so I looked at my experience, and I did a geographical, right? I went from New Mexico to California, and I didn't know anybody there that was doing the things that I was doing, but they have bars there, right?
Sure.
And the drinking went like that. And that was my solution. And I realized that I'm an equal opportunity, right? I'm not going to ask, what is that? I'm going to ask, is that going to be enough to get me where I want to go, right? You know, and I need to feel some way different. You know, if I'm happy, I use. If I'm sad, I use. If it's night outside, I use. You know, I heard a long time ago that bees make honey, alcoholics and drug addicts use. You know, and that's my first step experience right there. You know, first step doesn't tell me that I shouldn't drink or I can't drink. It tells me I will drink.
Yeah.
And my experience shows me that. And I know that today. You know.
That's awesome, man. And I love that, because that is something, when you're new in sobriety, it's so hard to wrap your head around the fact that it's like, you know, I was an alcoholic long before I ever took my first drink, right? Just never like feeling like anything was good enough, dude, or like never feeling a part of, and it's just that internal discomfort, right? So I'm, like you said, if I'm happy, I want to be more happy. If I'm sad, then I'm going to try to turn it around, or maybe I just want to be more sad.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, there's always going to be an excuse as to why I need to go out and drink more, and why I need to go out and do all these things, right? And it's never gonna be enough.
Yep.
It's never will. And that's the spiritual malady. God, dude, I love talking about that.
And that's where it all begins, right? You know, because we develop the phenomenon of craving, and we develop the mental obsession, right? Mm-hmm. And the obsession isn't that my brain's going to tell me, oh, you need to go out and drink, you need to go out. The obsession is that stone cold sober, I think I'm like another guy. That I can drink like a normal man. That is the great obsession.
Somehow, some way.
Some way I'm going to beat the game, right?
Yeah. Dude, I love that. And I love that because you break it down. It's like, you know, I drink because I like the effects produced by alcohol. And I like the effect produced by alcohol so much, like you just said, that is going to become the great obsession of my life. I am going to obsess that somehow, some way, I'm going to be able to drink with impunity. And I'm going to be able to drink without all of the consequences, right? And that obsession becomes so great that my alcoholic mind clouds my judgment. I can't remember all of the consequences of the past. I can't remember all of the tragedies and everything because I don't have that sufficient force to do so, because I'm so overwhelmed by that just obsession to go back out there and somehow drink with it like a gentleman, right? And that is the power that alcoholism has in a man's life, right? And what's the solution? God.
God's always the solution, right?
Yeah.
And when I found that solution, you know, I've run with it. Until I was about 2 years sober. And I still had my home group. I was still involved in service. I was still praying, but maybe I was checking boxes. And Ray had always told me that if your sponsor gets loaded, you need to step over him and find somebody, right? So Nick wasn't really taking my calls anymore.
Yeah.
And I remember it well. I was at the CMA convention, had a room, and I was in my room, and I tried to call Nick again, and he didn't answer. You know, hoping for all hope that that he was going to pick up the phone, and he didn't. And I'd known Ray since day 2, right? And I called him, and he told me the truth. He told me the gravity of my situation, right? You know, Kevin Gill can, on the outside, look like AA All-Star or CMA All-Star, whatever A, but you're inside, you're dying, aren't you? And I'm like, yeah. And I'm bawling, and I told him, I said, will you sponsor me? And he's like, I've been waiting for you to say that. Because, like, when you're sponsoring a guy, I can't want it more than him, and I can't, like, drag him. It's like I can lead a horse to water, but I can't make him drink. Mm-hmm. What my job is as the sponsor, or my sponsor's job is to give me the material or the toolkit, and then I've got to pick it up, right? And I can't have his experience, and he can't want that experience for me. It's gotta come from me, right? Somehow I went from here to here. You know, and I haven't looked back, you know, and I've been through the steps with several other men. You know, it talks about in the big book that we retreat and go through once a year, right? I haven't done that, but I've probably been through the steps 8 or 9 times with different guys, and I'm always in the book, right? I'm a sick man, right? I always have to have at least one guy in the book.
Yeah.
You know, and most of the time I have 2 or 3, you know, and I'll get to 5 and I'll be like, I don't know if I can do this. And then God will put another one in my lap and
There you go.
You know what?
Asking shall receive. There you go.
I'll make a way. You know, it's funny, like, I was talking to somebody about, you know, if I'm impatient, I better not pray for patience. Because, you know, God's got a sense of humor. Yeah. And he's going to put me in situations where I have to be patient.
Yeah, he's going to give you something to be patient about.
Yep, exactly. You know? And then if I like, when I get impatient or, you know, start living in one of those character defects, and I start to shy away, I have enough sense that God will do something and I'll still be able to see it.
Wow.
And, you know, it's like, okay, I need more action. You know, I don't know if you've heard this, but there was a guy, Jimmy M., passed away from this disease, but he always used to say, be in the action business, not the results business.
I have heard that before.
That's something that you need to live by, right?
Right.
I need to just put into action, leave the results up to God, because that's way above my pay grade.
I'm just a foot soldier.
Yeah,
my job is to take the tools that were given to me and continue building.
Yep, exactly.
You know? Chop wood, carry water.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, and I love that. And there's 2 things in there that I loved about what you just shared. The first one is being when you're talking about sponsorship, and you can't want it for somebody. You can't want it more than the guy that you're sponsoring wants it, right? And I love that, because it's like, again, going back to my sponsor, it's like there's times where it's just like, well, no, man, it's like he's not gonna chase me down. He's not gonna chase me down and make sure I'm doing what I'm doing. You know, and that's the accountability. As I'm an undisciplined alcoholic, and I live an undisciplined life. And so if I'm going to change that, the first thing that needs to change is the accountability for myself and the accountability for my program. And I learned that because it's like I went a couple weeks without calling my sponsor, right? And I see him, and we go to the same church, and he's an usher at the church, and I walk up to him, and I haven't spoke with him in a couple weeks, and he goes, man, I don't even know, like, if I'm your sponsor anymore, right? And he was like, I don't know if I want to take you back. And that was the first time that I had an experience of like, oh, no, there's consequences to like not doing what I need to do, right? And it's not going to be like a, oh, sure, blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, if you want to work with me, there's certain things that I'm going to ask of you, right? And then if you're not accountable to those things, then I'm not going to work with you. And what that's taught me is now I can take that into every aspect with my relationship with my parents, my relationship with, my work and the people I work with, right? I understand that I am accountable to what I say I'm going to do, and that I need to uphold that, right? And I need to have that responsibility. So I love that you said that. But here's the thing. We were talking about the obsession, and we're talking about the bedevilments, essentially, right? The restlessness, the irritability, the discontentment. And there's a passage on step 10 that has really resonated with me, and I read it often, and it talks about a spiritual axiom, right? And it's a concept where it's, it is a certainty, a spiritual certainty, an absolute, that any time I start finding discomfort, dissatisfaction, I start picking apart a situation that I'm not happy with, it's just a reflection of where I'm at internally. That's just a reflection of my spiritual connection, my own maintenance.
Yep.
And that concept is so powerful in my life today. And that's why I love that so much, because I'll get in there and I'll be like, this guy's doing this, or this is happening, blah, blah. But it's like, really what's happening is that I'm actually not right inside. I'm not right with God. And now it's just revealing itself in all these situations, right?
Yep.
The world's never going to change. The world, just because I stay sober and I do the 12 steps and I think I'm an all-star, like you said, the world isn't different than when it was before I went into treatment. But what's different is my perception. What's different is me. The change came in here, right? So that axiom tells me, anytime I start feeling like that, anytime those bedevilments creep back into my life, it's because of here. It's in here.
Yep. And, you were talking about, and another thing that Ray told me when I called him that day was, so I guess you're done sponsoring yourself. And that just reminded me, you don't call your sponsor for a week, you're sponsoring yourself, right? And I may be 57 years old today, but I'm basically a little kid. I'm 11 years old because I did so many drugs and I drank so much alcohol that I stunted that emotional growth, right? And so I have to. And Nick, when he first started sponsoring me, told me, he goes, Kevin, your best ideas got you loaded. He goes, you need to start. What I want you to do is every time you think you have a good idea, or when you come up with an idea, you need to run it by a couple people so they can tell you how crazy you are. And I said, what about going to the bathroom? And he goes, well, you can leave that one out.
Yeah.
Right?
You use your judgment on that one.
Yeah. And you're talking about the spiritual axiom, To go on with that, I find that if I see something in a situation or something is wrong, I have to look myself in the mirror.
100%.
And then like in the literature, acceptance is the answer to all my problems. I can have nothing until I can, I may not ever like it, but as long as I can accept it, I can move on, right?
Yeah, man. You can't sponsor yourself, man. I love that too, because it's like my best effort, my 100% best effort in life landed me in treatment with 3 DUIs. That was and I was doing the best that I could up until that point, and that's where it got me. Yep. And it's like, and that's as good as it's ever gonna get. It tells me when I go back out, that's gonna become my peak, and everything. I'm just gonna keep going down.
Yep.
I'm gonna keep going lower
because
Right.
it's a progression, right?
Yeah.
I didn't start out smoking meth, in the backyard in a shed. It took a little while to get there.
Yeah. Oh man.
And I was thinking about this. I chased that feeling with drugs. The first time I did it, it was never as good, right? But I thought, if I do more, if I do it this way, if I do it that way.
Yeah. It's like, because up until that point, right? And for me, like I was always just like an alcoholic, right? Like obviously there was drugs in and out, but it's like my main thing was like I just never could stop drinking, right? And it's because, like you said, growing up, never feeling good enough, never feeling like I'm a part of, just being so deeply uncomfortable with myself, right? And that first drink, right, took all of that away. That ease and comfort set in. And I spent my entire drinking career trying to regain that sense of comfortability, that sense of ease, and it got farther away the deeper I went into it, right? And it's like, in my experience, I got, about 2 years sober, and then I was out in San Francisco on a work conference, and, I was in one of those things where I'm in this high pressure situation, right? At that point, I had been dry for months, sponsoring myself. And the thought came into my head, what would, ease this? No, what did that? And I took that drink, and it started another 9 months of just chasing it. Like a dog chasing a car.
Yep.
And I never got there. And I never did. And it took just burning everything to the ground, having no money left in my pocket, for me to come crawling back and saying, I don't have this. Mm-hmm. And that is the great obsession of every alcoholic, man.
Yep. That's true. And you're talking about, I have to do these things. A lot of people told me when I first got sober, when I'd say, oh man, I have to do this. I'm like, you get to do this.
Yeah.
And I think that's the difference between being grateful and not being grateful.
My mind instantly, that's the gratitude.
Yep.
Right? Because now I have to do this. It's a chore, right? Or I get to do this. I'm undeserving of even this opportunity to try to better my life. I'm undeserving of this group of people around me that are willing to give to me what was freely given to them, right? And they expect nothing of me, right? And these men that are willing to take time out of their day, time out of their weeks, and make a commitment to me, right? And all they ask is that I do the same, and then show others the same, right? And that's the gratitude.
Yep.
I get to do this. I get to do this. Because if I'm not doing this, I'm out in Puerto Penasco at a hostel just drinking my life away. And it's like, it's not a life. And today I've got real relationships. I've got accountability. People hold me accountable. I'm hold myself accountable. Like we were just talking before this, right? With like what I do with the sober livings. Who would have thought?
Yeah.
Who would have thought, If I'm out there loaded, only thinking about myself, can't see how my actions are affecting everyone else around me, you think I would have the opportunity to do the things that I do with the people I love today? No.
No, not at all.
And that's the promises that we're given, right? If we're able to do the things that we need to do.
And you were talking about accountability. And I'm a member of this accountability lineage group, right? And accountability is a choice. And I think it kind of coincides with step one, right? Because if I can concede to my innermost self that yes, I am an alcoholic and that I'm powerless over alcohol and my life is unmanageable, and that unmanageability isn't that I don't have a car or the outside stuff, right? It's that internal strife, right? And okay, where was I going with that? So yeah, it comes back to that's something I have a choice in, right?
Yeah.
If I choose to be accountable, I will be, right? I know a lot of guys that, they don't want to be accountable.
Right.
And what is accountability? Integrity.
Right.
Doing what I'm going to say, doing what I say I'm going to do. And that's something I hold near and dear, that I have integrity.
Yeah. No, I couldn't agree with you more, man. And it's like, and for the longest time, I always thought discipline, accountability, integrity, those were like negative things. But it's been the biggest blessing in my life, because it's like, I am a man today who has that in my life, right? And so I have those real relationships. The base of them are honesty and integrity, accountability, right? If all of these, all of my friends, everything in my life, they're able to rely on me just as much as I'm able to rely on them. And that's the kind of fellowship that you see, and that's the strength of everything. But it's like, it all comes down to, like you said, it is a choice. It's a choice. I'm either going to do this or I'm not. Mm-hmm. But if I don't do this, if I don't hold myself accountable and I don't get the results that I wanted, I'm not a martyr. I'm not a victim of life.
Yeah.
Life isn't coming down on me. Everybody else that's trying to hold me accountable isn't all of a sudden picking on me. It was because I made a choice not to be accountable to myself. I made a choice not to have integrity. Mm-hmm. I can't see that if I'm not doing the things I need to do. I can't see that if I don't have conversations with guys like you. I can't see that if I'm not plugged in with my sponsor and my accountability group. And I have met, like, iron sharpens iron.
Yep,
like
exactly.
Men sharpen men.
Yep, exactly. And that's like that retreat.
Yeah.
I am my brother's keeper, right? And iron sharpens iron,
Yeah.
right? And something else that I was just thinking about. I heard somebody say the other day that I need to take care of this and let God take care of all of this. Mm-hmm. Because it's above my pay grade, right?
Right. Love that. That kind of touches on. So my favorite passage of the book is the last two paragraphs of the book, in a vision for you, and it's I love when it's just like, ask God each morning in your morning meditation what you can do for the man who is still sick, but see to it that your own house is in order, mm-hmm. because you obviously cannot transmit something that you haven't got. And so I can have a spiritual experience and I can do the work, but I can also slack on that for months. And that's what it says. I can't rest on my laurels. What I did a month ago, I could have had a spiritual experience. I could have done all these great things, but what I did yesterday isn't going to help me today.
No, you've got to feed. I don't know. Maybe I heard it on one of your other. I've got to like nourish myself, not only physically by eating, but spiritually and emotionally, right? Mm-hmm. And that's kind of what the emotional part of it is, kind of the fellowship, the sponsor, Yeah. If I'm feeling some kind of way, I'm going to call him and say, look, I'm feeling this kind of way, and I can talk it out, and then it takes that power away from it. And he'll give me, if he has experience, he'll give me a suggestion or something that he's done to help him with that situation, right? Mm. Or if he doesn't have experience with that situation, he'll say, call this guy.
He probably knows someone who does.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And it's like, I've been around a few 24s, and I probably know somebody who's been through it. Nice. There's not a lot that I haven't seen or heard. I haven't seen it all. I'm not there yet.
You're pretty close.
And I'm so glad that I haven't, because you see a lot of, and anything I say is not me. I'm not that smart, right?
Yeah.
This is stuff that I've just like been a sponge.
Yeah.
And I heard a guy say that I hope I never get well in AA.
Right.
Because if I get well in AA, I'll think that I'm doing all of this.
Yeah.
Right? And the one fear that I still have is that if I ever relapse, I don't think I'm coming back.
Right.
You know, with not only with what's going on out there today, fentanyl, you know, and I find that I was a crystal meth enthusiast, but
An enthusiast.
yes,
I love that.
but I hear guys, you know, people are dying because they do their crystal meth and it's laced with fentanyl.
Yeah.
It's everywhere. And, you know, either I die or I don't think I could do the work. You know? And it's like I've sponsored a bunch of dudes.
Yeah.
And I can count on my hands and feet the number that are still sober, that still are willing to do the work. Yeah. Right? Because it is work. It's a lifetime of work.
Yeah.
One day at a time.
Yeah. No, and I love that you kind of touched on that, because it's like that was my experience exactly, where, you know, I had, you know, a couple years of sobriety and I'm so connected in everything, right? And then I drift away, right? But what I found is that all I had was a belly full of beer and a head full of AA. And the entire time I was out there, it was like I was so hyper aware of, I was like, these are my character defects. I'm letting this rule my life, blah, blah. But I'm loaded. I'm out there and I'm loaded. And it's so hard to come back after that. And it's so hard to like find that just true humility. That the most humbling experience ever is, like you said, to build up, you know, a fellowship, to build yourself up, to be sponsoring guys, have that fall and have to come back and again say, I am powerless. I don't know what I'm doing, and I need to do everything that I did once before to regain what I once had, right? And it's like it was harder to get sober the second time than it was the first time.
Yeah.
And then, you know, and I know for a fact if that day ever comes where I'm back out again, it'll be even harder to come back that time.
Yeah. And like, I may be 11 years away from the last time I picked up, but I'm just as close as the guy that's got 24 hours.
Yeah.
You know, if I wake up and decide, okay, it's Kevin's show again today, all bets are off. You know, and I don't know, you know, what would happen. It would be a dumpster fire in a hurry, I'm sure.
Without a doubt. Without a doubt, man. Well, I did want to ask you this too. We do this with all of our guests here on the pod. For anybody who's watching or listening, who's new in sobriety, early in sobriety, maybe contemplating coming back after a relapse, do you have any words of encouragement, advice for them?
Get out of your own way. See, the drugs and alcohol aren't your problem. Your problem is you and your reaction to life. And come home, you know, your family wants to see you. Your wife, your kids, whatever, they want to see you. And, you know, take that first step. And I guarantee you that your life's going to get better.
rarely have we seen a person fail who has
You know-
thoroughly followed our path.
I've heard this, and I think I might have seen it, that was the one passage in the big book that Bill was like gonna stand on a hill, and he wanted it to say, never have we seen a person fail that has thoroughly followed our path. I don't know, but you know what? I believe that. In my experience, if you do the work and one day at a time keep doing the work that God puts in front of you, you know, you can have long-term sobriety. You know, infinite sobriety.
I love that, man. I really do love that, because I find that more and more to be true each day that I continue having the opportunity to do what I do, right? Like my life is, with the sober livings, with the podcast, everything, I'm just afforded an opportunity to constantly be in the middle of the pack, man. And it's like I find that to be more and more true every single day, where it's like if I am able to thoroughly follow this path with rigorous and fearless honesty, my life will change. My life will change. And that has been my experience.
Yeah. And I don't remember what I was gonna.
It's all
just
good.
kind of went.
Yeah, we're kind of wrapping up anyways. Do you have any last thoughts, comments, concerns?
I just want to say thank you for having me. And this was a great experience for me. And I'm glad I got a little bit of like insight into what, because I've known who you are for a while. And I think the first time we ever met was really at the golf tournament.
Yeah. I was just going to say that. I was like, oh, I hope he doesn't say sometime before then, because I don't think I remember.
I don't think I ever met you before the golf tournament.
Yeah.
And I walked up to you and I said, "Hi, Eric. I'm Kevin. I'm supposed to be on your podcast."
Yeah. Well, what really happened is I'm in my cart and he pulls up behind me, and I just say, "What's up?" being friendly. And he goes, "We're still on for next Sunday, right?" And now pause, and he clearly knows I have no idea what he's talking about. And then he introduces himself, and I was like, "Oh, okay, this is Kevin." But it has been great, man. Great getting to hear your story, and I hope now that we've had this experience, we can keep in contact, man.
Absolutely.
I did really enjoy this, and it's conversations like this, on camera or off camera. It's like you can't sit down with somebody for an hour and have a conversation like this and not feel at least like some part of your cup has been filled.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And if it helped you or somebody that's watching, it was all worth it.
That's what it's all about, man.
Yep.
Well, we do appreciate it, man. Thank you. Maybe, down the road, as we continue growing, we'll have you back on. My goal is to, I always want to have people on, because what's going to happen is we're going to end this, and then I'm going to edit the episode, and I'm going to be like, I should have asked him this. I should have asked him that. Then we'll have to get you back on, man.
Absolutely.
But
anytime.
Yeah. Awesome, dude. Well, thank you so much for stopping by. Thanks, everyone, for watching. We'll see you next week.